welcome to episode 413 of the HaskinCast Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Haskin, here with a very special guest to talk about a YouTube channel that's, I just started watching videos on it a couple of days ago, and already the nostalgia is incredibly overwhelming, to say the least. But we'll get into all that. Let's say hello to Jim Hardy. Jim, how are you?
I'm doing great, Scott. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. Thank you for taking some time out to come on the show. Bob Hope, the first things that come to mind when I hear that name are obviously USO tours, but also Johnny Carson. My memories of him were seeing him on the Johnny Carson show, probably more than anything else, because obviously born in 72, I wasn't going to a lot of USO tours.
No, yeah, fortunately.
Yeah. Where did you connect with Bob Hope?
I connected with Bob. I was a summer replacement, Scott, for a fellow in the production organization that had to take the summer off or wanted to take the summer off. I don't know what the circumstances were. And they had a show to do in the summer, which is not typical, actually. So they needed somebody to fill in for him. I'd studied film and television production at Oklahoma, so it was plug and play for them. They didn't have to teach me anything. And, I thought it was going to be a summer job. And at the end of the summer, they came to me and said, look, we'd like you to hang around. You want to make this permanent? I don't know what happened to the other guy. I don't know if they decided he's not coming back. He decided he's not coming back. But anyway, I was happily surprised. And I've been here 38 years now.
Wow. Well, I mean, if you're given an opportunity, like I think of, temporary office jobs that I've had, for example, if you go in, you know your stuff, you don't put up a lot of fuss, you do a good job, you go maybe a little above and beyond sometimes, it's not hard to secure something where they're like, we got a guy in here who's doing great. Let's just keep this rolling. So you must have impressed them with your just being you and doing what you do.
Well, I hope so. I guess so. And I thought about it a little bit. And, because it was a temporary job and I knew that there was going to be a definite end to it, I thought, well, I don't have really anything to lose. And so part of the job was to be over at his house and run tape for him and cut the Tonight Show clip and different things. So you had a lot of opportunity to be one-on-one with him.
Sure.
And rather than try and guess what he wanted to hear, which I think a lot of people do, if he asked me a question, I gave him an honest answer. And sometimes I would say, that's not the best joke. I think the better one is that. And sometimes he'd agree and sometimes he wouldn't. But I think what he appreciated was that he got an honest answer.
Yeah. Well, think about, I mean, at his level of celebrity, how many people would just do anything to be around him and be a yes man? And I just have to stay in his good graces, and then I'll get opportunities. I'm sure there was so many people like that in his life.
Oh, undoubtedly. I mean, to be a celebrity at that level, you have a huge team, secretaries, accountants, lawyers. The entire production staff was enormous. So, yeah, I think everybody maybe was treading lightly, walking on eggshells a little bit because they wanted to hang around and didn't want to say the wrong thing or look the wrong way. So, I had the freedom to just be myself, and fortunately, I guess that was something that he enjoyed, and the rest of the production crew tolerated.
Yeah, well, I would think so. I mean, you must have made a good impression, obviously. But was he, would you say, one of those guys that if you gave him an answer that he didn't like, that you would be gone the next day? Or do you feel like he was more human than that?
I don't think so. In as much as he asked a question, and if you give him an answer and you tell him why you came up with that answer, even if he disagrees with it, I think that he appreciates, he would consider it. And he certainly didn't agree with everything, every opinion that I had, but he wasn't, it's not like, well, get out. He would just stick with his original idea, but, if I assume he asked the question because he wanted your opinion and an answer, and he took it. And sometimes he agreed with it, sometimes he didn't, but you weren't punished for it.
That's good. And I would imagine too that there were people that probably he could tell who was being genuine and who wasn't. And if someone was giving him an answer that served their purpose through him more than served his purpose, I'm guessing he could probably tell.
I would think so. After that many years, I think that he was a pretty good judge of character, and he
Yeah.
had a lot of writers on his staff,
Mhm.
and they would tell him the truth.
Yeah.
So, no, and so he had people around like that. I think that he could rely on for an honest answer, and
Mhm.
probably some of the others, maybe not so much, and that you needed him around for other things, for
Sure. Well,
technical expertise or whatever.
if he kept coming back for your opinion, that must mean that he at least respected it or appreciated it enough to spend his, because I don't get that he would be the kind of guy that would waste his time.
Well, no, I think you're right. I mean, in as much as I could have sat there in silence and just run machines for him, like he asked.
Mhm.
If he didn't want to know my opinion, he wouldn't have made the conversation. So,
Sure.
I certainly didn't offer anything. I
Mhm.
mean, that wasn't my place. But
Yeah.
I mean, we could have done, our job could have been accomplished in silence if that's the way you wanted it. So,
Sure. And how old were you when this happened?
25.
25. Okay, so you're pretty young and you've got some experience under your belt, obviously, to be able to get that position. But as a 25-year-old, what is it like going to the house for the first time? Are you nervous? Are you excited? Is it terrifying?
Some of all, all of the above, because well, certainly it's very exciting because you're going to meet this man now in person,
Mm.
legendary, and I grew up with him on the TV in my house, so um, you don't know what to expect.
Mm.
I was not given a tutorial or an orientation. You don't know what to expect. He's quite possibly one of the 10 most famous people on the planet.
Right.
At that time. I mean, get letters in the office where somebody would cut out a picture of him from a newspaper and tape it on an envelope, and we would
Mm.
get it. That's famous. So you don't know what to expect. And
Yeah.
he couldn't have been nicer. And and that was not just because I was new and he wanted to be nice to the new guy. He was always like that with
Yeah.
everybody, and he was just genuine and sincere and chummy, very friendly, took an interest in you. So, boy, was I relieved.
Yeah. Oh, I can imagine. Just getting through that first day, just getting that experience and then leaving the house probably was a completely different experience going back day two.
I'll tell you, I think to a man or a woman that was on his production team or worked with him, especially on production doing the shows, we couldn't wait to go to work in the morning. It was fun. You were
Yeah.
doing something that you really enjoyed. You were with people that you really enjoyed that were also fun. And I mean, it wasn't work at all. When you're doing a show, you're doing 12 or 14-hour days, and they flew by. And
Yeah.
it was a blast.
Did you ever think about too, there's another side of looking at that is that millions of people are going to see your effort. You're not cutting promo in it, for an Arby's commercial in the back room. You're working on stuff that's going to be seen by millions of people.
Yeah, it's interesting. You quickly kind of forget about that. In the beginning, I was kind of aware of it and thought about it. Wow, like the Tonight Show clip was the first thing that I cut for him.
Wow.
I mean, wow, I mean, tens of millions of people are going to see this, and it was kind of, but you forget about it very quickly, and it's just, it just becomes part of the job. And I know, people that have been musicians and different things and toured and everything, and we're all the same way. We tell stories about the things that we did and the people we met, but at the time, it didn't seem, after a little while, it didn't seem that special anymore. It's just, it's part of your daily routine. And then later on,
Sure.
you look back on it and go, boy, I wish we'd had a camera.
Right. Oh, yeah. Because I mean, it's not like today where every single step you take and every bite of food is documented on
Yeah,
somebody's phone or not.
yeah.
I don't even know who you would compare Bob Hope to today as far as that level of celebrity. I mean, there really isn't anybody that's ever been like him other than him.
Yeah, that's a pretty fair statement. You you don't have to go through the whole process anymore to become to become a star. It was hard to
Yeah.
be a star
Right.
in those days, and most of those the people that I met of his generation, like Jack Benny and George Burns and Lucy, and people like that, came up through vaudeville. Some of them came through Broadway, some didn't. So, and then radio, then it was radio, and then they jumped to TV and they make movies and everything. They did everything.
Yeah.
And that was sort of it was like going from single A to double A to triple A ball, and then finally you get, to the majors. There were
Right.
a lot of steps, and you
Mhm.
had to be successful in every one to become a star. Now you can become a TikTok star if you can do one thing even halfway well.
Yeah.
You
You
know,
can do outfit changes or,
yeah,
it doesn't even have to be a talent.
yeah, it was hard, and but because of it, they had a greater appreciation for what they had accomplished and for what their life was
Sure.
like. Bob always said time and time again how lucky he was.
Mhm.
And that whole generation, they were all nice to everybody. They appreciated the audience. They would joke with the makeup guys and the camera people and whatever. They were just friendly people because they had a great appreciation for what they had accomplished and for the life that they had. And they knew that these people had a lot to do with their success. I
Sure.
don't think there's too much of that anymore.
No. Well, I think there's more the you should feel lucky you're part of my team as opposed to I'm so glad you're part of my team. I think it's really the whole mentality seems
Yeah.
to have changed greatly. There's a vast difference in ego. But when I think back to the people that you're talking about, Lucille Ball, Jack Benny, you had to be able to be a well-rounded entertainer. You had to be able to dance, sing, tell jokes, have charisma. It had to be you had to be able to do it all. And now I feel like you said, if you have one thing that can make you stand out, and it doesn't even have to be a big thing, just
Yeah.
something to cut through the vast array of what's out there,
Yeah.
which I suppose would be the other advantage for back then was that there weren't as many people to compete with.
Well, that's certainly true. Yeah, there weren't as many people to compete with, and that's true. But you're right. If you wanted to work steadily, you had to be able to do a little bit of everything. And later on, when I was working on a show, and I won't name who it was, but we had somebody on that uh, was supposed to do a song duet with one of the other people. And I said to Bob, I said, Bob, we got a little bit of a problem because she can't sing. And he said, well, what do you mean she can't sing? She's in show business, isn't she? But but it was different by then. This was in the 80s, and you didn't learn to do everything, or you didn't need to learn to do everything. So,
Right. Wow.
but
That's an interesting assumption though, because you're right. If you were coming from that time, the people that came up with you would be of that caliber. But
yeah,
it's kind of hard to move with the times and just think, well, if they're at this level, they're probably at least this good or can do at least this many things. So yeah, that would be a hard thing to adjust to.
yeah, yeah. He just assumed, because that was his upbringing. And while Jimmy Cagney, of course, was a great dancer.
Yeah.
Um, and Bob started as a dancer and was a very good dancer and could sing, could carry a melody, introduced a lot of popular tunes in the movies. He could do it. He could do all that stuff. I'm sure, although I don't think that he was ever asked to. Humphrey Bogart could dance, could sing, could do. I mean, he found his niche and didn't have to do that anymore. But there was a time certainly when he had to do all of those things, and Betty Davis had to be able to do all of those things. So he
Yeah.
assumed that was still true in the 80s, and it really wasn't anymore.
Yeah. And I think of Dean Martin would be another example of somebody who is incredibly well-rounded, had that charisma, just somebody that you can watch and go, wow, this guy can do anything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He could do drama.
Mhm.
He's a great light comedian, could sing, could dance, he could do everything. And I think that the fun for a lot of the people that Bob had on the show, when you're talking about the 80s and the 90s, he would get people that were on a top rated show, like a John Forsythe, Linda Evans,
Sure.
Donna Mills, and people but they were dramatic
Mhm.
actors and actresses. But they were red hot because they were on a red hot show, and he'd get them on the show, and he'd have them doing comedy, and he'd have them doing song and dance stuff, and he would choose things, um, that gave him the best chance to be successful. He didn't choose the songs that had a ridiculous range, and
Mhm.
had a medium range that anybody could accommodate.
Sure.
One step was a simple dance step from vaudeville that anybody could do, and also lent itself to patter. You could talk back and forth.
Mhm.
And there's a little bit of comedian in everybody, I think. And he was a very generous comedian, and he gave the guests all the best jokes at his expense. So he gave them every opportunity to be very good at the things that maybe they don't do on a regular basis. And I think
Mhm.
that they really loved doing it and had a lot of fun. You could see everybody's having a lot of fun.
Well, and it gives them a chance to stretch and do something a little bit different. I mean, you think about John Forsythe, he's playing one character. His character is very rigid and, rich guy in command and that. And to be able to break loose and go sing a song or do a dance step on a show, that had to
And
be heaven.
and very funny. He was a very funny man and would ad lib on this. I mean, he was a very funny man. So it was in there. It just wasn't part of the role that we all remember him for.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Before we get to talking about the YouTube channel, I would beat myself so hard later if I didn't ask you, tell me what it was like to know Lucille Ball.
Oh, goodness. That was such a treat for me because I had certainly, obviously, like all of us, grown up with the I Love Lucy, and I'd already seen all the movies that she'd done with Bob. She was so sweet and delightful and funny. She was just funny. She didn't need anybody to write anything for her. She was, and she and Bob or anybody else that was on the show, they'd start going back at each other, always with the zingers. They're always giving each other zingers, and especially Bob because they had such a long history together.
Mhm.
And she would, he'd be talking about, you know, somebody, singers aren't as well paid as they used to be, it seems to me. And she said, stop worrying about other people. You're not a singer. And they would just zing each other all the time. Very good natured.
Mhm.
But she, and when she was on the shows, I mean, this was in the 80s, and she was such a perfectionist. And she would be the one who would say, I could do it better. And we all thought
Wow.
that was great, and we're ready to move on. No, I want to do it again. I could do it. I missed that a little bit. I could do it better. And she
Wow.
did something 3, 4, 5 times because she wasn't satisfied with it. And it was great the first time. And I thought, well, I mean, and Bob was the same way. The work ethic, it never left them. They never took anything for granted,
Mhm.
even at that level of stardom that they'd already achieved. They didn't want to put anything out there that they didn't think was up to their standards.
Wow.
It was a good lesson for anybody.
I love that. I really love that because I feel like today that's another thing that we've lost. I feel like it's all right, we got it done. Let's hurry up and upload it. There's that let's go time factor as opposed to let's give just quality material and nothing but things that are worth watching.
Yeah, and the reality is that the Bob Hope audience would have watched anything that he put up.
Sure.
You know, and I'm sure he knew that, but
Mhm.
he didn't. Like you say, let's give him the best that we can do, and he would spend the time to make the show as best as possible, and go over the monologue over and over and over to get the absolute best 6 or 7 minutes. He did the work, and they
Yeah.
all did. And
Was there a time when oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
well, I was going to say they didn't, and at a time when they didn't really need to do that much work anymore, but they still
Right.
did the work. It was personal pride. Right?
Sure. Well, I think too, it's probably habitual at that point. I mean, you've been doing it so long in your career, it's just the way that you operate and what your mindset is. But did he ever come off stage after doing, let's say, an opening or something that he had rehearsed and come off of the actual performance and be unhappy?
No, not really. I mean, he
Okay.
would be surprised. Well, in particular, when you did the monologue, for example, or you recorded it, anything on television, it was recorded.
Mhm.
So, you had an opportunity to edit things. And when he would do them,
Oh.
It would be a 40-minute monologue that he would do that ultimately he would cut down to the 7 or 8 minutes that you saw on TV. Now he would
40
be
minutes?
surprised. Yeah, he would do about a 40-minute monologue to get 8 minutes of material. And he would be
Wow.
surprised at what jokes fell flat, what jokes got a big laugh. Sometimes he would say, "Oh, I thought that was going to be huge," and he would leave it out of the show because the audience ultimately, if 500 people didn't think it was very funny, then 300 million people are probably also not going to think it's very funny. He would be surprised by it, or there would be a joke that he would, that barely made it into the monologue. He thought it was, yeah, but we'll give it a shot, and it would get a huge laugh. And you go, he kind of shrugged and go, didn't I wouldn't have guessed.
Hmm.
But I mean, the audience is the ultimate determiner of what would go in the show because
Sure.
ultimately, he would defer to to their opinion over his own.
But how did you put that together? Did you have multiple camera angles so that you could make it smooth?
3 camera shoots that we can
Okay.
thank Lucille Ball for. She's the one that brought the 3 camera shoot to television.
And then how many audio sources would you have?
Well, you have, well, if it's on the soundstage, you've got audio sources all over the place.
Mhm.
You're covered.
Okay, good, good. Wow, that must have been amazing to sit there and decide, all right, we're going to edit this out, we're going to keep this in, just to watch that process. Even as a bystander, I think would be amazing, let alone to actually be a part of that.
Yeah, and beyond the monologue, which ultimately would be about 7 or 8 minutes, you know, in those days, the show was typically around 48 minutes, and then towards the end was about 45 minutes as they kept, bringing more advertising time in and taking
Sure.
time out. But, for a 48-minute show, you would typically have a script that was an hour and 15,
Mhm.
because you wanted to have a lot of opportunity to tighten stuff up. You know, you wouldn't write a 48-minute show and then, discover, boy, this sketch feels like it's 20 minutes long. And now you got nothing you can do with it. You got no
Right.
no wiggle room. So it was always intended to be that there was going to be a lot of stuff that was going to get left out. You just didn't know what it was going to be yet.
Mhm. Wow, that's so interesting to think about because nowadays I think they just write to the time, right? They just say, all right, we've got 42 minutes to fill. Here's our sketches. This is the approximate time of each one of these. If it's running slow, we'll get them to speed up. And they
Yeah,
really just go for that mark. They don't go for an hour and a half anymore.
yeah, it kind of feels that way, doesn't it? Yeah.
Well, then they have to pay everybody, and then they're paying them for skits that don't ever air. And I'm sure the network isn't fair. There's a whole, financial side behind that too.
Yeah, the writers' room now, and well, even in Bob's day, the writers' room was set up where all the writers would get together with Bob, and they would identify what topics that they were going to, write into the monologue. This is the list of topics that we're going to do, and then
Mhm.
we'll do a sketch about this, and we'll do some talk patter with Tom Selleck about this and this and this, and then typically writers would be assigned certain portions of the show. You write the talk spot, I'll do the monologue with Johnny. You do the sketch, and then that's how Bob's writers wrote the whole show.
Mhm.
Everybody wrote a whole show. Everybody wrote a whole sketch. Everybody wrote a talk spot. Everybody wrote a whole monologue. And then
Wow.
he would cobble together the best pieces from each one, like a jigsaw puzzle.
Mhm.
I think that was a very unique way to do it. The writer certainly worked a lot harder because they had to write everything.
Right. Oh, wow. What a job that must have been. That's where you go into work every day being excited and terrified at the same time.
There's a great story of he had a new writer that was just starting and was bringing over his first batch of material that he had written for Bob. It was brand new. And Bob was just driving out of the driveway when this guy was coming up, and the writer handed this manila envelope of paper through to Bob, and Bob just felt it with his hand, the weight of it. There was so much stuff in there. He goes, "Yeah, this is good," because he knew if there's that much stuff in there, some of it's going to be gold.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Yeah. So I want to ask you about, I mean, I could listen to these stories all day, to be quite honest, but I want to ask you about the YouTube channel. What made you decide to say, okay, we've got all this footage. We need to get this out there so that people can enjoy these things and keep Bob's memory alive?
Yeah. Scott, we probably should have done it a long time ago, but we're a bunch of old people and wouldn't know how. But there's an outfit called Spotted Dog, and they're all young, fresh, bright people who understand, the modern technology, and they know how to do it, and they know, when to upload things, what to upload, what to, put up stuff on a regular schedule thing. There's a rhythm to how to do these things, and they know how to do it. And we have, more than 1,000 hours of content, and they said, nobody's seeing this stuff.
Mhm.
Wouldn't you like people to see it? And so, it was a marriage made in heaven because they're doing a great job, and we've got so much wonderful material to put up there. And we put up things 2 or 3 times a week. There's always something new to see, Scott, and everything that we put up yesterday or last week or last month will always be up there.
Right.
So you're never going to miss anything. If you go onto the YouTube channel, for the first time today, you got a lot of catching up to do. And if you go next week, there's going to be stuff on there next week that's not there today. So, I should live long enough to get it all up there.
Now, are we talking about stuff that's from the shows, or are we talking cutting room floor stuff?
There's going to be, we haven't done any cutting room floor stuff yet, but I've got a stash of that stuff that is going to go up there too. We've
Nice.
got great outtakes. We've done all the television shows. We're going to get into the movies and take out some of the golden moments from the movies. We've got, I don't know what the market is for radio anymore, but I don't know if I know people do go on YouTube just to listen to music. So I think it's possible that people are not opposed to listening to something that they don't have to look at.
Sure.
Maybe
Sure.
we'll get into radio at some point because he had amazing guest stars on in radio too that didn't live long enough to be in television. So
Yeah.
you know, I
Wow.
mean, we got vaudeville, Scott. We have whole movies of him in vaudeville. I mean, it's just nuts what's over here.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Are you working with any of the USO footage?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
There's a great clip up there right now. It's with Jane Mansfield from Okinawa, and the pattern between her and Bob and the general, who's I think the actor's name was Alan Gifford, who played the general. It's just hysterical, and she is so wonderful.
Mhm.
Uh, Not only is she just wonderful to look at, but she was so good at that personality that she had created,
Yeah.
and she does something there that I mean, Bob almost falls on the floor in laughter. He didn't see that coming, and she is just and we have stuff with Romy Schneider up there. We'll get Raquel Welch up there and Anne Margaret, and there's a lot of wonderful stuff to get to. And we're just getting our feet wet here, really, Scott. We're just getting
Sure.
started.
Yeah, and I mean, just what you've got up there alone already is plenty to watch for anybody. And of course, folks, I do have that link in the show notes. Make sure to go to the page, subscribe, and if you're not aware, if you click the little bell, you will get notifications when new material is uploaded. It'll go to your phone if you're, if you're logged in through your phone, or sometimes you'll get them through email. Just depends on how you're logged in. But make sure to hit that bell because that's a very important and they're nice little surprises throughout the day when, oh, cool, there's a new video to watch. I'm having a stressful day. I'll take a few minutes and go, watch something that'll make me smile. And how could Bob Hope not make you smile?
Yeah, it'll put you in a good mood. I'll tell you,
For sure.
he was always in a good mood.
Mhm.
I think that there's a tendency, pardon me, it's something is blooming out here, Scott. It's
Oh,
driving my eyes crazy. I haven't cried like this since I watched Brian's song.
that happened to me a couple of days ago with the
It's
pollens. And
just,
yeah, it's that time of year.
but he was, a lot of comics had a dark side to them. I think, that was almost common, that they would be very moody and had not him, not Todd. Man, there was no dark side to him. He was a happy guy. He loved what he was doing. He'd whistle and hum around the house, and he was just always in a great mood. It was a stress-free zone to being around Bob. He never hesitated to make a decision. And, if something went a little bit wrong or off the rails, no big deal, we'll fix it, you know.
Mm.
Um,
Well, we need more of that
uh,
attitude.
well, it's the confidence, I guess, that comes when you've done something, for 50 years already, and that
Sure.
confidence and calmness, um, it's contagious. And now everybody on the set feels, yeah, this is going to get worked out, no problem. Whereas otherwise, people would be running around like a bunch of chickens.
Yeah. I've worked with some people that are just, you feel like you come near them with a cup of water and they're just going to explode. And you really tend to shy away from those people. It's very counterproductive.
It is counterproductive, and you certainly hear and read about people like that, and then they'll say, don't look them in the eye and don't talk to them,
Mm.
talk to me and I'll tell them. And then you read about guys like George Clooney, who have a basketball court brought in so that he can play basketball with the crew and he eats lunch with the crew. Well, if the schedule goes overtime and you need the people to hang around for an extra 2 or 4 hours, which crew do you think is going to be willing to do that and want to do that? I mean, you treat people the right way and they're happy to go the extra mile for you. So I never
Yeah.
understood it. I always thought it's more work to be a jerk than it is to be a nice person.
Well, and it's more costly because you might get through this production, but who's going to come back for the next one?
Yeah.
If they didn't have a good time or if they weren't treated well, then the next time you're in town or the next time you're doing something, you've got to find new people. You got to test the waters again. Now you've got a reputation. It's way more work.
Or you got to overpay to get the people back from the last
That's
time.
true. But I would look at it this way. This is what my takeaway would be is if the guy that has the most eyes in the world on him can get through a production calm and cool, there's no reason anyone else can't do it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, Jim, thank you so much for taking some time to come on the show for all the work that you and your team are doing on this channel. It's absolutely wonderful. I'm excited to get through the rest of the videos you have there now and then see what else you upload. But it sounds like it just already it's a treasure trove.
Oh yeah, there's a lot to say and it just grows all the time. I sure appreciate you letting me come on and tell people about it, Scott.
For sure. Well, thank you for your time and your stories, and best of luck as the channel grows.
Thanks so much.
We'll see you
Thanks.
guys. And tomorrow, I've got another bonus episode coming to you guys at, well, it'll be 1 a.m. LA time. And then we're back on our regular Wednesday schedule after that. I think we're doing another episode with Rich or continuing the Beethoven series. Either way, you'll get one of those two shows coming at you this week. Thanks for listening, guys. Jim, thank you so much. And we'll see you guys in the next show. Cheers.